Memorial Day Monday. Hopefully, maybe you didn't have to get up quite as early this morning and get to have a fun day enjoying your family or getting to enjoy just a little more downtime than normal on this holiday. So, a question for you. How often do you make statements about yourself such as, I am blank, so I always blank? Or, I can't blank, I'm too blank? What labels do we place on ourselves that are self-imposed and self-limiting versus God-imposed? We know that only an artist can say what the intent and the depth is behind the painting that he created. No one else has the authority to define what is meant to be communicated by that piece of art. No one else has the authority to say what that piece of art is intended for, except for the artist himself. So why do we try and define our own identity outside of the truth with a capital T that God, who is our creator, says about our identity and about who we are? So we're going to look today in Judges chapter 6 at the story of Gideon. And Gideon is just found by the Lord threshing wheat. For all we know about Gideon, seems to be just a regular Israelite. But the Lord comes to Gideon in a time where the Israelites are being oppressed by the Midianites. The Israelites have had this pattern of disobedience, of rebellion against God, and so God allows the Midianites to oppress Israel because they've disobeyed him and they've turned away against him. So picking up in Judges chapter 6, we're going to read verses 11 through 16. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "But sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our fathers told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and put us in the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "But Lord," Gideon asked, "how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together." Gideon had labeled himself as weak and the least in his family. He didn't consider himself a mighty warrior like the Lord called him. This is why he was threshing wheat in a wine press. Typically, wheat was threshed in an open area so that the pieces that were not going to be fruitful in making flour and bread would blow away so that there would be a breeze. This was typically done in an open area, but Gideon was afraid. He was hiding from the Midianites in the winepress, a very closed off and protected area, because he was scared and he was afraid. He certainly didn't see himself as a mighty warrior. And notice the Lord's response in verse 16 to how Gideon defined himself. Gideon says, "How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest. I am the least in my family. Notice that the Lord's response in verse 16, the Lord doesn't say, no, you're not the weakest, you're the strongest, or no, you're not among the least in your family, you're one of the greatest in your family. The Lord doesn't respond to Gideon by arguing against these weaknesses or limitations that Gideon has. But the Lord speaks with authority by promising that he will be with Gideon. In verse 16, the Lord's response to Gideon's claims of who he is, of his identity, is, the Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together. The Lord responds to Gideon's list of weaknesses and limitations by emphatically promising that he will be with Gideon. God's presence and God's strength, that trumped Gideon's limitations and his weaknesses. Gideon's identity was defined by who created him and by who was with him. So why did Gideon forget who he was? Why did Gideon have this case of misplaced identity? Well, let's look back at verses 12 through 13. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. But sir, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our fathers told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and put us into the hand of Midian. Gideon forgot who he was because he forgot who was with him. He was looking horizontally over all the circumstances around him. He was looking at the lack of victory. He was looking at the oppression around him. He was looking at the lack of huge miracles that he could see with his eyes. And he let all of that have the final word as to whether God was with him or had abandoned him. So Gideon forgot that God was with him, and therefore he forgot who he was. He forgot his identity. And because he forgot that God was with him, and he forgot his identity, therefore he wasn't willing to step forward to what God was calling him to do. God told him in verse 14, go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. And Gideon responded by saying, how can I save Israel? So what step of obedience has the Lord been pushing you to take? But you haven't because you've thought, I can't do that, Lord. I'm too blank. Or, Lord, there's no way I could ever accomplish that. I'm not enough. I don't have enough blank. Remember, if you are in Christ, his Spirit is with you and in you. And his presence and his authority as your creator, that is the basis for your identity. It doesn't mean that your weaknesses and your limitations don't exist. It just means that they don't define who you are. And they certainly don't determine the depth of obedience that you have in stepping forward into what God has called you to do. I hope that blesses and challenges you this week. It certainly does me. Basically, I just need to stop looking at myself and remember who is with me and who has called me, and that it's his strength that is powerfully at work within me. Therefore, I can say, just like Paul did in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, I can boast in my weaknesses, because when I'm weak, I am strong, because I know who is with me. And that is what defines who I am. I'll see you soon.